Israel had turned away, but when they finally cried out, God heard them, and he raised up a deliverer. The story also shows that deliverance requires courage. Ehud had to walk into the palace. He had to stand before the king. He had to convince the guards. He had to request a private meeting. He had to enter the chamber alone. And once the doors closed, there was no army behind him. There was no rescue team waiting outside. There was only Ehud and Eglon. One man had power, the other had faith, courage, and a hidden weapon. And when Ehud walked out of that room, the balance of power had changed forever. But there is another fascinating detail. Ehud did not stop after Eglon died. He could have escaped into the hills and saved himself. Instead, he went to his people. He sounded the trumpet, and he said, "Follow me." That is leadership. He did not simply remove the oppressor. He called the oppressed to rise, and the Israelites responded. They seized the Jordan crossings, they defeated the Moabite forces, and they secured their freedom. The victory therefore belonged to more than one man. Ehud began the mission, but the people had to act. And ultimately, the biblical account presents the victory as God's deliverance. That is why Ehud's words are so important.
The Lord has given our enemies, the Moabites, into our hand. The victory was not won by my hand, but by the Lord God who delivered us from our oppressors.
And that may be the greatest lesson hidden inside this strange and dramatic story. The person God uses is not always the person people expect. The situation God changes is not always the situation people think can be changed. And the victory may begin in a place that looks completely insignificant. A messenger walking into a palace, a secret sword beneath his clothing, a private conversation, a single moment of courage, and then suddenly an entire nation begins to rise. Eglon thought he was receiving a secret message. He never realized that the message was the end of his reign. He thought Ehud was simply another Israelite bringing tribute. He never imagined that the man standing before him had been sent to bring his kingdom down. He thought the palace was the safest place in his kingdom. But the palace became the place where his power ended, and Ehud, who entered that palace alone, walked out and became the leader of a national uprising. For 18 years, Israel had lived under oppression. Then one man stepped forward. One mission changed everything. One king fell, one army was defeated, and 80 years of peace followed. The story of Ehud and Eglon is therefore much more than an ancient tale of assassination. It is a story about courage in the face of overwhelming power, about deliverance when hope seems gone, and about the unexpected ways God can work through ordinary people. Maybe that is why this story has survived for thousands of years. Because somewhere in every generation, people face their own impossible situations. They look at the power standing against them and think, how could this ever change? Ehud's story reminds us that what looks impossible from the ground may not be impossible in the hands of God. The man who seemed insignificant became the instrument of deliverance. The king who seemed untouchable fell, and the nation that had been oppressed for 18 years found freedom. So the next time you read the story of Ehud, don't only remember the sword, remember the courage, remember the 18 years of oppression, remember the people who cried out, remember the unexpected deliverer. And remember that the story does not end inside Eglon's palace. It ends with Israel standing together, the enemy defeated, and the land finally experiencing rest. Ehud entered the palace, carrying a secret. He left carrying a nation toward freedom, and Eglon entered that final meeting as a king. He never walked out. The man who thought he controlled Israel discovered that his power had a limit, and the people who thought they were trapped discovered that their story was not over. Thank you for watching, and remember, ancient stories are not just stories about the past. Sometimes they reveal truths that still speak to us today. Subscribe, stay curious, and keep discovering the stories hidden within the ancient world. Until the next story.